Welcome everybody that joined, and this is the Enterprise Agile community and meetup. So we generally talk about cool stuff at large company enterprise level because it's kind of hard to do stuff there than smaller companies. Not to take away from smaller companies, but it generally is more difficult. So we generally talk about practices and techniques and cool stuff to help with that agile journey. So today we're lucky and welcome our two colleagues that are going to come in, and Paige and Ron, to talk about this new thing, Fast Agile. We're going to do some Fast Agile. So we're going to learn all about that, something new that we can apply. I would also encourage Paige and Ron to, and I'll send you all a link later, to join Agile 20 Reflect Festival. So on February 21, we're celebrating the Agile Manifesto. This is a global event. Thousands of people across the globe is going to join. And we're going to have different events to share and to learn from each other. So I think this would be a great subject. Also, everyone else on the call, I'll put the link out there. If you haven't seen it before, you can join, you can become an ambassador, you can sign up to speak, you can participate, you can host an event or whatever. We're trying to do something unique in February 21. So I just want to throw that out there. I am recording this. I already started recording. So we will share the Zoom recording after the meeting, and we'll send it out to everyone that RSVP and those that, of course, couldn't join. And we're building a giant, well, it's not giant, we're building a catalog now. I think we got like Ron and Gopal, we got like 20 something Zoom recordings out there. So I think it'd be cool to make that public to everyone. We had some great speakers. I'm sure Ron and Paige will be great speakers and educate and illuminate us. So that'd be great. And we'll put that in our catalog. So without further ado, I would like to turn this over to Ron and Paige.
You. All right, Paige, Paige is going to give us the introduction. I'm going to, you want me to hit play on the PowerPoint, or do you want to do that?
I am not a host, so I don't know if I can. Let's see if I can. Let's see. Oh yeah, there we go. And I'm going to do that. All right, are you all seeing that all right?
Yes.
Yes?
Yep.
Okay. So good evening, first off. We're going to talk about fluid scaling technology for Agile, or as we commonly call it, Fast Agile. Hello, computer. Oh, all right, I'll do it this way. There we go. My name is Paige Watson, and I'm really excited to present with Ron tonight. Ron and I have presented on this a few times together. This is kind of the first time we've done it online, so it should be kind of an interesting process. But bear with us. We're also going to be using a tool, an app called Slido, as part of our presentation. It's a way that we can poll and do questions and stuff as part of our presentation. So if you want to download that app for your phone, you certainly can. If not, we'll give you a URL later that you can put in a browser, but it might be easier than jumping back and forth. So that's up to you. We're also going to ask you to kind of take a mental leap tonight, sort of not unlike the leap it took to get from what they would consider classical physics to quantum physics. We're going to talk about stuff that you might think is kind of unbelievable, sort of science fiction-y. It defies common best practices, and FAST is kind of ahead of its time. But then again, so is Agile in 2000, right? And we've all seen where that's taken us. And so hopefully you'll see where maybe FAST can take us from here. Before we describe FAST, we kind of want to make sure that you're kind of in a place that's a little more receptive to what you might actually like reject sometimes, because it is a little different. Let's see, there we go. So we think that sometimes the unintuitive can't really work. And we're gonna, I hope, answer that it can. We're gonna talk about scaling Agile in a complex systems. First, I want to have just a little exercise though. So we're going to watch a video, and then we're going to do a little word practice. So let's see if I can get over to the video. Okay, and are you guys seeing the video here? Let's start that out.
This is time lapse, so it's meant to be choppy. If you think it's your video.
It's also a little longer than really needs to be. So I'm going to jump forward in a couple.
Is this Ron's vacation home?
Soon to be. Okay, and Ron, you want to take that over?
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Paige. So while you're thinking that, actually, I think you were going to do the next section, weren't you? The little exercise?
Yes, but you're going to present there.
Oh, I am? Oh, okay. Let me line that up. So if we spoke before about that app, Slido. So this gives you a chance to download the app while I try and work out how to get to there.
You got it. Want me to keep going? Oh, there you go.
Oh, it's okay. Yeah, go.
So if you want to open up the Slido app or go to slido.com, and then it'll ask you for a number, And if you want to enter 7922, if you want to enter that where it says enter code here. Sorry, 79225.
25, yeah. There's a QR code there if that helps you.
Right.
And there's the question: what words came to your mind when you were watching that video? And you can enter multiple times. Teamwork, yay. Organization. Wow, we haven't got any doubles yet. Family, people. Oh, teamwork. Teamwork's winning. Architecture, lots to do. Parallel development. Plan, that's interesting. Complexity, chaos, organization. Team, quick, people. Splinters. We got some jokers here, that's good. Crowdsourcing, oh, plan comes up in the middle. Okay, as the popcorn stopped, I'll give it a couple more seconds. This is good. These are some good words. House, family, specialization, splinters. So what are the big ones? Collaborative, teamwork, plan, and parallel development. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that. Oh, I got a couple more coming in. I hope you enjoyed that application. I discovered it recently. I was using a different one and did some hunting around. I found this one. I kind of like it. So that video, I think really captures the essence of Fast Agile. That's kind of what Fast Agile looks like. And the word like chaos and complex come to mind. And really what we're trying to do is move from this space of a mass production mindset, which I'm going to say that's the old way of thinking. So that was classical science, into this new way of thinking. I'm going to call it the age of disruption mindset, or the age of software mindset. I think Scrum's 20 years old, and Scrum really straddled this complicated to complex, and Fast goes deeper. Fast goes into complex, dipping into chaos and back out again. I'm hoping you're all familiar with this diagram. This is the Cynefin model. It's okay if you're not, but essentially it shows the kind of 4 states of that a system can be in. Chaos is not a bad word, and we'll go into why. You know, we're used to hearing, oh, it's total chaos, but chaos, as we know now, like the science of chaos, chaos theory, chaos actually comes with some side benefits that we can use. And the trick here is to solve complex problems with a complex solution. And if you don't, you end up with a lot of unintended consequences. So I think scaling Agile is a complex problem and not a complicated problem. And what we've been doing to date is mostly complicated versus complex. So I'm really trying to get you in a different state of mind, as Paige was saying, before we tell you more about Agile. So I want to go into a little bit into the theory of chaos and complexity. So the words in chaos and complexity you're going to hear are emergence, simple rules, self-organizing systems, complex adaptive systems, natural order, and order from chaos. And there's many books emerging now around these new sciences. Is this where we were switching to page yet?
Sure, I'll talk about it.
Yeah.
So when we first started talking about how do we actually talk about fluid scaling technology or fast agile, and how are we going to tell people what we're so excited about? We sat down and we came up with a sentence, right? And a system. It's a system for organic collaboration on creative endeavors from the small scale to the large. That's what came out of almost using the FAST process to come up with that as well. Mm-hmm. And I'm gonna let you control it here.
Okay.
Ron. So
there's a link to the website there, fastagile.io. Just a warning that the website is in minimal viable product, but the core concepts are there. Actually, I'll talk to this slide if that's all right, Paige.
Yeah.
So how did FAST start? And I like sharing this story because it'll give you a bit more of help you understand it when we get to it. So we're doing a lot of setting the stage before we get there, because otherwise you'll hear it and you go, that's crazy. So so what happened in 2014? I was an Agile coach. I'm still an Agile coach now. In 2014, I was an Agile coach, and the coaching I was doing was very much at the team level. I was comfortable with that. I was confident in that area. So extreme programming and Scrum. The hot topic of the day was Agile at scale. And it was something wasn't sitting right with me. So I'm leaving it to smarter people than me to work it out. I'm like, I'm going to let them work it out. And when it becomes obvious, then I'm going to go to what feels right. But for now, I'm going to stay where I am. And so it was New Orleans 2014. The third day of the conference was an open space event. So that's the image down there on the left-hand corner. I'm hoping you're all familiar with open space and what an open space event looks like and feels like and how it works. I was familiar with it, and I'd been presenting the previous day, so I was exhausted, and I decided, I'm going to be a butterfly and I'm here to recharge energy, not give energy. I'm not going to go host and facilitate sessions. I just need to recharge, but I'll go and attend. So I'm sitting there just watching and observing quietly as this process unfolds. And we just finished populating the marketplace, if you're familiar with open space. We populated the marketplace, and I was looking at the marketplace and thinking, wow, there's 800 people here. And in 20 minutes, they've managed to organize a one-day event. Like when do you see 800 people self-organize? It's really rare. Like it doesn't happen. And it suddenly struck me. I went, this is self-organization at scale. Why aren't we using this, which feels agile to me, which what I was hearing about in scaling agile didn't feel agile. This feels agile. This sense of emergence and self-organization at scale. Why don't we use open space as a way to do agile at scale? Whoa. And that picture on the right was me jumping out of my chair. I left my clothes on. But yeah, I literally was so full of energy and had to facilitate a session. Like, hey, why don't we use open space as a way to facilitate agile at scale? That was the very start of an idea, 2014. So by 2015, I then presented that idea. I had to build it into a framework because there's certain, how do we do planning? What do the teams look like? Where would they sit? What's the backlog? So I had to start kind of create it into some sort of a framework, which I presented at the Agile Roots conference. And after I presented it, someone came up to me and said, this is brilliant. You've created a complex adaptive system. I said, I have? And that was me not knowing what those words meant, and started to do more research into complexity and the science around it. So by 2016, I find myself at Primera, and a health insurance company here in Seattle, which is where I met Paige. And I found myself in a situation where it was an agile scaling challenge. And so I asked the team's permission. I said, hey, do you guys want to try something different? Because we can either, so essentially we had we're working on a product, and then a new product was coming along, which was mobile, which was kind of sexy. Everybody wanted to work on the new sexy platform. But then the question is, well, who gets to work on the new one and who gets to stay on the old kind of legacy one? And what would be fair and right? And who gets to play chess master and say, all right, you go there, or do, so I said, well, why don't we try and stay together as one tribe, one team, and just have a marketplace worth of work? And this was the idea that I'd had from FAST. And so that was the beginning of the idea. The team said yes, and we said, look, if it doesn't work, we'll give it 2 months. If it doesn't work, we can roll back. I can implement Scrum with my eyes shut, and that will be easy. But we've got the space, we've got the time. It's a greenfield product, and we went ahead. And the experiment lasted for 2 years. It emerged and evolved. So what you're going to hear today is something that we actually did, and it grew past my original conceptual idea. So it's a little bit of a warning here that what you're about to hear, if you haven't been in open space, it may not make sense, because you've really got to experience what that kind of emergence looks like and feels like. And there's the website again. So I'm going to describe the process to you. I haven't found a good infographic way or images yet of describing it. So I'm just going to do it verbally. So hang in there. So imagine you've got a portfolio, like a group of teams are working on one backlog or towards one product line. Let's say there's 6 teams. So if we got all of these 6 teams and we merge them together into one tribe. So now they're not in a team, they're now part of a tribe. So let's say there's now 60 people in this tribe. So 60 people in a tribe. So they come together in this room, in this shared area, and I'm going to pretend I'm the product manager. In FAST, we say product director. And I use the term director after I read Ed Catmull's book on Creativity, Inc. And I thought, that's what it is. It's like someone creating a film or directing a film. Like, you want sort of control, but then the creativity is amongst the tribe that you're with. So I came up with the term product director. So the product director is directing a movie. And behind me, I've put up on the wall here a release map, which is very similar. Think of story map. That's probably a conceptually simpler. So put a story map of like, hey, this is all the work that these 6 teams were doing. And now we can visualize it and we can see where it is and what state it is. And as this product director, my job is to get up here and rally the troops. You guys are amazing. This is so great what we're doing. You know, if we get this product out, this is going to change the world. And you guys are the right people to do it. I'm so glad you're here. Something really important is happening. We've got Microsoft coming in 2 weeks' time. If we can get this feature here done before they're here, I think we've got a really good chance of really getting them as a client. That'll be worth millions to us if that can happen. So I think that's my highest priority on this backlog here. So this is me playing the product director, rallying the troops. So this event that we're talking about is called the FAST meeting. There's only one meeting in FAST, and this is it, it's a FAST meeting. So now I've rallied the troops. We've got 60 people in the tribe present. And then we say go. And at this point, it's a lot more like open space. So now Joe is in the tribe, and Joe says, well, I'm going to get up. I'm going to be working over on this story over here. I was working on that last week. I really need to get this done. So I'm going to be over in room number 1. Lisa gets up and says, well, I've got a bunch of refactoring to do because we've left a whole bunch of tech debt behind over on that story that we finished last iteration. I'm going to be over in room number 2. So if you can see the similarities here to open space where we've got natural leadership happening. Bob gets up and says, well, I'm going to start work on that new feature that we need for Microsoft. I'm going to be over in room number 3. And then Tina gets up and says, well, I'm noticing the architecture is heading in a certain direction. I think there's a component, some components that need to be pulled out. I'm going to be over in room number 4. So in this example, 2 people have pulled things from the wall and 2 people haven't. And that's okay in FAST, that's allowable. So the product director is watching this. In this example, we've said, so we've creating essentially the marketplace or the iteration board. And these are the 4 opportunities for people to work in this iteration. They go up on the iteration board. So now of the other 60 people, your job is to look at that iteration board and go, what do I most want to work on? And you'll say, well, yeah, I'm interested in that feature. I'm going to go there. Or you say, well, you know, Quinn Gill is the most amazing software developer tech coach I've met. Wherever Quinn goes, that's where I'm going to go because that's where I think I can learn the most. Or I might go, you know, I've been working on the back end so long. I really want to do some front end work. I want to become more T-shaped. So I think I'm going to go to that room because there's more front end work to do there. Or I would just want to see that feature done because I've been on that and I just want to see it through. So there's different reasons why you might go and choose your team or your room. And so then you go put your name up against that. So we've essentially self-organized into teams for that iteration. So you go trot off into your room and there's your team for that iteration. So the iteration is a time box. At the end of that time box, let's say 2 days. At the end of the 2 days, we come back to the same room. Now we're all back together, and then a representative from each of those teams will get up and say, well, I was in team number 1, we were working on this. We made some progress, we discovered these things, and we put our notes up on the wiki. Someone else will go, yeah, we finished that story and we actually started on this other one. Here's what we did. And so we call this show and tell. So we give a show and tell. We may give a demo if we've got something to demo, or we might just give an update. But really the idea is to keep the whole tribe in sync. So now everyone's aware of the new state of the system. So this is the show and tell stage of the iteration. So now while we're all gathered together, we say, hey, why don't we just kick off the next iteration? So we clear off the iteration board and out comes the product director and says, you guys are amazing. I love you guys. This is awesome work. I love the progress I'm seeing. Let me know if there's anything you need I can help. Here's what's important this week. So essentially rinse and repeat. So that's what the iteration looks like. Hopefully I've blown your mind and there's lots of questions. There usually is at this point.
We have a question in the chat. How do you make it happen that people understand each feature? Waldy, do you want to state your question?
Yes, I think I understand it. So because I gave an example here, we said, hey, this feature here, if we can get this done, we're going to win Microsoft. So that's not really enough understanding of what that feature is. And if you remember, Bill said, hey, I'm going to go work on that Microsoft feature. So I'll tell you what will happen. So Bill says, I'm going to work on this Microsoft feature. Let's say in theory, there's maybe 60 days of work for a team of 5 people, right? Let's say 300 days of work to get that done. So if you go walk into a room with feature that's got like maybe 4 words, 5 words on it. And like another 6 people show up. There's my team. We've got a new feature. So what do you do? Like as an Agile developer, what do? You start asking questions, right? So you would say, hey, product director, who's the SMEs or stakeholders that I can talk to get an understanding of what this feature is? And of course he or she will have that lined up and ready for you because they're going to show up to that room. So they show up, or you go to them and you say, tell me about this feature. And they'll start describing the feature. So they'll say, well, this feature is blah, 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 and here's some information that's over here. And while you're listening to it, you're taking notes and you're like, oh, it's blah, blah, blah. So I heard 3 stories there called blah, blah, and blah. Is that right? And they're like, yeah, that's right. And I don't want to say stories. I'll say there's 3 epics. Or I don't, all right, let's say epic. There's 3 epics that we heard, flim, flam, flow. And the stakeholder goes, yeah, that's correct. And so we look at that, we're like, oh, well, I guess we would probably start with this one. That would make the most sense. Yeah, well, tell us about that one. And the SME or the product director, whoever it is, will say, well, that one is blah, 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 blah. And then while they're saying that, you're like, okay, so I heard these things. So from that epic, I heard these 3 stories. Does that sound correct? Yeah, that's correct. Great. Well, if we're going to do those 3 stories, we'll probably start on this one. Tell me about that thing there. And they'll tell us that. And we might break that down into 2 sub-stories. And we keep doing this until we've, I don't know if you can see that process, but this process here of breaking things down, and software developers know how to do this, right? This is what we do. So we break it down and we keep breaking it down until we go, you know what, I think we've got enough work to start on. Here's what we're going to do for the next 2 days. We've just found our work. Now we've broken enough down, just enough, just in time. And that's very much fast. We don't spend the whole time breaking that down ad infinitum to its finite pieces. We break down enough work, but we've also got the history of what and the context of what we're working on, and we keep that somewhere else. That's a topic we can cover at the end. We call it feature mapping or feature trees, but we have that context. And so now we keep that, and so the 6 people we've got, we start making progress. We get to show and tell. We go, yeah, we started on that feature. It took us about the best part of a day to get a good understanding. There's our feature tree is over there. We've got our notes in the wiki, and here's what we got started on. So then when someone else comes in, they can quickly pick up on the context of what they're working on and where. Hope that answers that question. Paige, were you going to add something?
Yeah, I was, because I'm noticing Walty had asked a question about like acceptance criteria and how long a person commits to work on a team and that sort of thing. And I'll tell you, so the acceptance criteria is set in that time when the developers for that iteration are talking to the PO or the stakeholders who have who have that knowledge. They're not, we didn't spend a whole lot of time writing it out ahead of time, or there's obviously an idea of where we're going and that sort of thing, but there was time put aside as part of that iteration to go and work on that. And in terms of how long you would commit to work for a team, the real commitment was that you were going to work for that team for the next iteration. But what often happened is that we had, you tend to get such a responsibility, a feeling of responsibility for that work that you stick with it. And there were times when I would be like, oh, I've got this knowledge about the security processes we use, so I'm going to go work with that other team because I know they're going to need that information for the next iteration or so. And then I'm going to come back here and I'm going to keep working on this thing that interests me also. So it wasn't necessarily, you're going to stay on the team for 4 months or 6 months or whatever. We were one big tribe. We worked all together. We just had different groups we were with for that iteration.
Yeah, and we did kind of warn you from the beginning to this is different. And so we didn't use the word acceptance criteria or definition of done, right? These are Scrum contexts. This isn't Scrum. It's done when the product director says it's done or the SME says it's done. The acceptance is when you think you're at a good point to say, yeah, hey, I think this is done or this is accepted. Then you get the SME, you do a demonstration against to the SME or the product director or whoever the product director says, and they say, yeah, that's awesome, you're done. So that's kind of when you're done. So we're relying more on conversation. But of course, like when you're breaking things down, if it's helpful to put notes against something, then put notes against something. And if that's, you could think of that as acceptance criteria, great, but it's not contract driven. It's conversation driven. It's kind of a different concept. So the other questions I'm going to hold on to for Q&A towards the end, if that's okay. But the context of the feature kind of made sense for me to answer there. So yeah, the questions about remote and broadly applicable, I think that will become clear. I've put here, I don't want you to read this now, but essentially what I described, I've tried to put in words here. And so we're going to leave you with the deck so you can come back and read that. Page.
I would note that we do seem to have 2 meetings, not 1.
You have 2 meetings?
We have show and tell and we have the FAST meeting.
Oh, sorry, that's the one meeting. So when I described it, it's like, hey, while we're together, so it's the one meeting that goes in different phases. So it starts.
So the show and tell is the end and the beginning with the
right
beginning of the second
Correct.
part. Okay, good.
Yeah.
I didn't get that.
Yeah, it's hard to describe it because I start from essentially the middle of the meeting, but you have to do that to kind of get the context of the end of the meeting.
Great,
but yeah, they back onto each other.
Yeah.
So it becomes one meeting.
After the very first meeting, every other one starts with, let's talk about what we did last iteration. Mm-hmm. Right. And then we go into planning and marketplace and all that for the next iteration. Mm-hmm. So it is one meeting.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some sort of encompassing patterns that we tend to see, that come out of this process. And I think you have control. You want to just
yeah.
forward?
Yeah,
okay.
I can. Yep. Just tell me, click.
Yeah, go ahead. So some of them, right? We talked about the dynamic reteaming. That's fairly clear. But there is a team self-selection, like a self-selection of work, very much a selection of like, this is of the things that we have to do. Here's what we as a team are going to work on and try to move forward on for this next iteration. We have what we call a latticed or networked organization model. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. If you've read Team of Teams, that it's sort of around that idea. There's open allocation of work. There's a self-management. There was very much a ownership of work that allowed us to decide what needed to get done in what order and to be able to do the right thing at the right time. How about that? We used open space technology, or you'll hear it talked about liberating structures to choose our work. And then we definitely had a team of teams. And if you've read this book, there's an image that we like to refer to that goes along with this. Oh, yes, we did have some more We can go back and talk about
yeah,
those
I'll go,
books real quick.
just quickly skip over.
Yeah. So there's a couple other books that were really good. The Wisdom of the Crowds was sort of talks a little bit about what type of thing came out of FAST. Definitely Drive and his Motivation 3.0. It was very powerful and very positive to go to work in a place where you know you had the autonomy, the purpose, and the ability to grow your learning or your mastery, and that you were valued as a team member. And then we kind of touched on the user story mapping, and we can touch on that a little later on if you wish. So in Team of Teams, they talk about basically current scaling agile models have like a command of teams. You have all these different teams, and you have a single sort of command and control structure sort of around or above those. Our fast agile model was definitely a team of teams where we all worked together, and we were able to flow into the teams that were needed at the times they were needed. This is a really great image of what that was.
Yeah, the command of teams is each of those little blobs is a static Scrum team. So that move from command to command of teams is the introduction of Agile. So we know how static teams work, and current scaling is how do we spread work across these static teams? Well, we've broken that model, described really well in Team of Teams. Paige, you want to?
Yeah. So we often talked about how it allowed us to have choreography over orchestration, and a really good example of this is the roundabout versus the traffic lights, right? The traffic lights are the orchestration, like stop, go, get ready to slow down. This group goes, that group goes, etc. The roundabout has just a few simple rules, right? You can only do certain things, but everybody has those same rules, and it flows and it moves and it continues to move. It's very much like we'll talk about ballroom dancing, where yes, there's an idea of how the dance works, but you have a conversation, a back and forth, a choreography between the dancers. I use the example of professional wrestling, where they know what the end outcome is, right? They know who's gonna win. They don't know exactly, it's not like, okay, you're gonna go in and do this, and then I'm gonna hit you in the stomach, and then you're gonna throw a chair at me or whatever. They have small communication things that they do. Someone will grab someone and they'll tap them on the shoulder, and that means I'm gonna throw you in this suplex. And then the other person will, stomp their feet 3 times. And that means, okay, I'm going to fall down and pretend to be, out of the ring for a while or whatnot. And it gets to the same point, but it's not orchestrated, it's choreographed. This was very much what we found when we were using FAST as well. It's definitely choreographed. We have an idea of where it goes. But we don't have a direct orchestration of how to get there.
I'll talk to this next one if it's all right, Paige.
Yes, please.
It's yeah, this move from orchestration. It's like we're still addicted to control. The era of mass production, that worked for the era of mass production. And we think it still works for us today. So every business yearns for this control, and mass production gave us reductionism and determinism. Yet that's given us an illusion that we keep chasing. So the image there on the left is, that comes from Jira Align, and that shows you the dependencies between teams. And that's supposed to help you, right? Hey, now we can control it because we can visualize it. The image there on the right is one that I've seen at many clients. They're hey, we're going to go do this. I think it represents a PIA. We're going to get this increment done over these 3 sprints, and we visualize how 4 teams are going to be able to deliver on it. So this simple diagram is how we think things work, right? If we can simplify it and break it down, then it's going to work. But hey, what happens with team 3 there in red? You know, what happens when they're done? Are they going to sit there twiddling their thumbs? Or are they going to take on other work? Or are they even going to be ready at that starting point where they show up? It looks like team 1 is going to be pretty busy there. What if we get the lottery effect, or someone goes sick? You know, are we really going to be able to finish? So this is the illusion that we live in, and that we think that we can line these iterations up and they can fit like jigsaw pieces. I think there's an easier way of working, and that's really what FAST is moving towards. And this is the way that nature works. So the path to order is to let go of control, and that's probably making some of you shudder and shake, and that's okay. But you know, the signs of chaos and complex systems, emergence and self-organization, creates order for you. And this picture, this image here, is of Starling murmuration. And we use that a lot to demonstrate what a complex adaptive system can look like. And this is what we see in nature. This is how nature scales. I remember thinking about scaling and say, well, how does nature scale? And this is how nature scales, via complex chaos and complexity. So one of the questions that we get asked a lot is, how do you start a transformation? Which is a really good question. Which we didn't have an answer to for a long time, because at Primera, we just emerged the answer. Like we just emerged and evolved it. But we've since been thinking a lot about it, and we think we have an answer. Paige, do you wanna talk to this one?
Yeah, certainly. And well, very much like Ron, when he kind of had this idea about it, we think that oftentimes, like if you just want to facilitate an open space event at the office, and we've had several at when we were at Primera and at other places where we worked, it's a very easy concept to introduce and get that idea across. It works very well when you have a very large diversity of opinions, when you have this sort of like, it's due yesterday, you have very complex things, because you have all these people with very good different backgrounds who can help and are excited about working on different things, or they're excited about this one thing, and other people who are excited about it will come to join. So an open space event is a really good way to start. And oftentimes that leads into, or could also be paired with like a hackathon. Hackathons really, when you get down to it, are already almost doing the FAST-Agile. You have a group of people who get together, you have an outcome. We'd like you guys to make something around this theme, or maybe you have certain features or things that have already been set up, you know, and the people that show up are excited about doing the work. They get together into a group, a small group, and they divide that work amongst themselves, and they have a very short iteration time, and they come back with maybe not a fully working product, but they come back with something more than they had before the iteration. And I kind of was going to jump in and talk about this when we talked about the process and the iteration. We didn't really finish the task or the work or the feature or whatever, but we had to show positive what did
value.
we use the word? I want to say
what value you delivered.
Yes, yeah, like positive value that yes, here's some work we did, or here's what we found, or here is, you know, we worked 2 days on it. The best was a couple times we worked 2 days on it, and we thought we were going down this way. and it totally didn't work, right? And what's the value in that? Well, yes, we have to start over, but honestly, we learned something. We learned something about our systems, and we learned the way it didn't work. And at worst, we've lost 2 days as opposed to going through a 2-week iteration or whatnot, and then going, it's just not working at the end of 2 weeks. So, so very much having a hackathon is a great way to sort of introduce these ideas and principles. And if you've done hackathons or had them, you probably already comfortable with it. What you have to have, if you want to start this, a really good way is to start like a pilot team. Go out and find a group that volunteers, and they should volunteer. You could say, you could go and suggest it maybe to a team, but it really should be up to them as to whether they want to do it, because it's a very big change in how we work, and it can be uncomfortable. And because of that, you also have to have a team or tribe agreement. You have to have a way to make decisions as a tribe. What happens when we disagree? Who chooses, and how do we choose the architecture and the direction and what's best and what's not best? How do we resolve conflict? I've been doing this for 20 years. I've been doing software development for 20 years, and I know best, and you should do it my way. That doesn't always work. And so how do we resolve that so that everybody comes to the best best agreement, and we can continue to move forward making quality software? And then one thing that we found, not really originally, but over time, you have to have an offboarding process. And that doesn't necessarily mean a firing process. What that means is you have to have a way, because this process is not for everyone, and it takes a lot of change. And I often tell people, you have to give up your id if you've been those senior developers who have sort of been in control or been around for years, and let's do it my way. And you have to be able to go, yes, my way is good, but there might be a better way, and I'm willing to kind of give that up. And I might not always be the most knowledgeable on this sort. You have to have that ability to work as a team, really. And because this isn't for everybody, you do need an offboarding process, and that should be, something that allows you to either say, this person's a great person, they're a fabulous developer, they're really good at what they do. They just don't really want to be part of this process. And so we'd like them to go work on this other team, or they'd like to go work on it, or whatnot. It's kind of up to you, but it needs to be part of it.
Yeah. I think we can answer Michael Levine's question at this point, which is, are we suggesting this method is broadly applicable, or is it just a good fit for these folks at this time and point, or something in between? And so I think we're saying that, yeah, you need to test the waters before you jump into FAST. And so these two previous methods, that Paige mentioned, is really testing the waters, because people have to be of a certain mindset. You have to have enough of them of a certain mindset to make this work. And so test the waters first. FAST is a little ahead of its time, but so was Scrum. And I think that's where it is. I don't know how many organizations are ready for this, but Paige and I were working at a very traditional organization. So even within a traditional organization, it can and may still work, is the short answer to that.
So how did you get a very traditional organization on board?
On board, yeah.
And as I recall, there were some naysayers who were among you.
Yeah, which is why we mentioned why we realized why offboarding is really important. And okay, so the short, I'm going to go pretty quick because we got Q&A at the end, but the short answer of how we got it inside a traditional org is, so I had been consulting at Primera previously, and my friend Steve took a full-time job there, and Steve reached out to me and says, hey, come and work at Primera because we're going to do something pretty cool. I'm like, I would never want to work at Primera. That's the dumbest place I've ever seen. You know, I'd sooner slash my wrist. Why do I want to work at Primera, right? This is the most dysfunctional company I've ever seen. No. And he goes, no, this is different. And so he convinced me to come and talk to the director. And the director says, yeah, we've got this new project. We're off to one side. It's going to be skunk works. We've got autonomy. And so I said, look, if you can convince me, I'll come and work there. And so he convinced me it was true. So I went in. So with that autonomy, we were able to do that. So our director reported to the CTO. So the CTO had given us that autonomy, and we used that, and that's how it worked. The short answer. So yes, if you're going to do it, you need autonomy, because you're going to piss everyone else off in the organization, which is kind of what happened. Like the other Agile coaches, do you think they were happy that we weren't doing Scrum, that we weren't working using the same tooling that they were using? And I came out of those Agile meetings pulling knives out of my back. So,
All right, but you also got 40 or 50 people on board.
We did.
Something very different. And
correct.
That was really the question I was asking. Was
yes,
not the director, but the but all the doers. How'd you get all the doers on board? And what did you do with the ones who didn't?
So we were lucky because we remember we were building this thing up from the ground up. So we were cherry picking and recruiting the whole time. So we were looking for people that would work initially in the extreme programming environment. And extreme programming is very compatible because we're used to pairing and mobbing already. So that mindset was an easy transition into this. So part of our values were like pair programming and all the XP practices. And I think that was a big part of our success of why it worked at Primera.
And a lot of it, to getting the people on sort of became word of mouth also. You know, people that we knew, people that were other people in the company that heard about it and were kind of like, oh, that's really exciting, really excellent. I want to go do that. Look at, you know, we would hear from other people like, you guys are always laughing and you know, having a good time, and like, yeah, this was how we worked. And so it was easy, I think, once you came in, if you were of this mindset that you wanted to do this, you know, we didn't have a lot of people who would go, oh, this is not really for me. This is not, you know, I don't want to be part of this. I thought I did.
So a couple more slides, and then we get to the home plate. So how does FAST scale? So the maximum size of this tribe, we think, is 150 people. So at Primera, I think we probably got to 40, 50 at our largest, and we ended up splitting into two tribes, which I was sad about. But the largest tribe had about 40, and the other one 20 at its largest point. And this number, there's some science behind it. I learned about in Malcolm Gladwell's book, A Tipping Point. And he also mentions Gore, and Gore used this concept very much, where they would only scale as soon as an organization grew beyond the tipping point, they would split it and become two separate parts of the organization. So you can scale then by tribes.
So Gore is the company that makes Gore-Tex?
That's correct. Yeah. And they're famous for Gore-Tex and the way that they work. So Paige mentioned earlier, open allocation, that came from Gore, as well as the concept of they call it a lattice organization. So it was interesting because I discovered this stuff after I came up with the idea of FAST. I'm like, wow, FAST isn't new. Other companies have been doing something similar. So I'd say Gore and Valve, what they're doing, it was probably pretty similar to FAST. So what problems did FAST set out to solve? So FAST, one, it was trying to solve Agile at scale, but two, it was also out to solve Agile, corporate Agile, or zombie Agile, flaccid Agile, fake Agile. Because I think Agile started in a certain direction and it went in another one. And I wanted to fix that as well. So when I created FAST, I wanted to ensure it couldn't be corrupted, or it couldn't be corrupted in the same way that I've seen Agile corrupted. And I think it solved that issue. And scaling. Dependency management. So we spend so much time in scaled Agile. Like, how do we resolve dependencies? Whereas in FAST, dependencies kind of resolve themselves. How to split and manage work across teams. It just happens by self-organization. Sharing of specialized people and limited resources. If I've got, let's say, 12 Scrum teams, and each of those Scrum teams needs UX. Do I need to hire 12 UX people? What if I only hired 8 UX people? How do I share those 8 people across these teams, right? Because Scrum says we need to be, contained and cross-functional. So FAST solves that really easily, where that this problem of specialized people, because they'll look at what's on the board and go to the teams as needed. So if I've got a team and I need some UX, I'll get up at the FAST meeting and say, hey, I'm going to be working on this. I really need some UX help on this, and I'll declare that in the FAST meeting. And that's how we do it. Employee engagement is a problem that needs solving in the United States. 66% of employees are not engaged at work. That was a 2018 survey by Gallup. Now you can run a survey inside your organization and say, oh, that's not true for us. But if you run it inside your organization, those people are lying because they're doing it inside your organization. This is why I trust Gallup, because they're doing it anonymously from outside organizations. So chances are inside your organization, 66% of those people are not engaged. So now by giving people autonomy, Daniel Pink has proven that's part of what makes people engaged. So I think we're working towards solving that problem. Scrum doesn't scale, and don't take offense to that. Like, if you read the Scrum guide, it says nothing in there about scaling. So you can create frameworks that use that scale Scrum, but Scrum on its own doesn't, neither does extreme programming. So you have to come up with something else, which is why we said, well, why don't we just not try and scale Scrum? So some of the benefits that we found was that you now have a flexible workforce. So initially at Primera, we had 2 products. I think it later became to 3 within the one tribe. Now, if product 1 suddenly needed more attention because there was a looming release or some sort of emergency, we were able to shift focus, and more people would be working on product A and less on B and C, because we were able to flex that easily. You've got a lower cost of ownership. So we had 1 coach, that was myself, for the entire tribe. So your cost of ownership is Scrum is, if I've got 8 teams, I'm paying 8 Scrum Masters. Fast Agile, I've got 1 coach for up to 150 people, much lower cost of ownership. Innovation increases. When you give people autonomy and self-direction, that is where innovation. So this is where I keep saying chaos is not a bad thing. And when you understand the Cynefin model, chaos is where innovation happens. You actually want some element of chaos. You can't stay in chaos, but you do need to dip into it in short periods so you can come back into complex. But it's that dipping in and out of chaos is where innovation happens. So FAST is designed to maximize and harness chaos. And if you think any open space event is a chaotic event, in that I don't know what's going to happen. When we say go, I don't know who's going to stand up. I don't know what sessions are going to be there, but yet it always seems to work, because chaos leads to natural order. And so we're using that, we're harnessing chaos. Natural leadership opportunities. So anyone is able to lead. And if I turn behind me and people are following me, I'm a leader. That's what leadership is. So now I have the ability to facilitate a session every 2 days. And it doesn't have to be 2 days. We did 2 days at Primera. I can get to that in the Q&A. But every 2 days, I've got the opportunity of facilitating a team. And we called that a a swarm leader, because that was this idea of swarming. Now, what's your opportunities in a regular company, right? You're all waiting to climb that ladder, and hey, that dev manager job's come up. Which of us is going to wrestle and win that one job, right? So this is very different. And I noticed one of the questions is around what do you do about career development and so forth. Hopefully we'll have time to get into that one. And the ability to change and grow your skills. And I gave the example like, hey, I've been working on the back end. I really want to learn some front end. So this gives you that ability to do that. Now, one of the rules, simple rules of Fast Agile is do the right thing by the release. So if my expertise is back end and I'm really needed in the next iteration, and then I'm going to use my expertise, but I'm also free to go, hey, this next iteration I'm not needed. Great, I can start learning more on the front end. Were you going to say something, Paige?
No, that just reminds me of one of the questions, and maybe I'll preempt that. One of the main questions I get when I talk about this is, you guys self-select your work, right? Yes. And anybody can choose to work on the stuff they want to work on. Yes. Well, what about the stuff that nobody wants to work on?
Yeah, that always
right? That
up.
always comes up.
Yeah.
And the answer is very simple. Because of the way we work and because of the responsibility that we feel, because we have that self autonomy, someone goes, gosh, I really don't want to go clean the toilets, but somebody's got to do it, so I'll do it this iteration. Or I know this is only going to take three iterations. I'll work on it. I really could use some help. And other people will be like, yeah, okay. And we do it for 3 iterations and it gets done. And then we go do fun stuff, you know, or whatever. Yeah, that happens a lot, and more, you know, more than it would in places that I've other seen where you're trying to give out work and people are like, oh, I don't want to do that. I'm going to keep my head down. You know,
Yeah.
That the autonomy of this and the responsibility that we all feel when we were working this way led to getting the stuff that needed to get done.
Mm-hmm. Which comes back to the heart of Agile, right? Trust them to get the job done. Like, give them the autonomy, the environment, the autonomy. This is in the Agile manifesto. These are highlights from the manifesto: self-organization, motivated people, and trust. And that is at the heart of Fast Agile. And we did it. And with that, people will do the right thing. They don't need pushing. They don't need hoops. They don't need bonuses. They don't need whips and carrots. They just need autonomy and freedom. And this is such a refreshing, this is the only way I ever want to work again. Mm-hmm. I'm looking forward to kind of reliving this experience. Like, I selfishly made an environment that I wanted to work in. And it was kind of a shock that it isn't right for everyone. So I think in years to come, it will be. And I think my realization, it kind of broke my heart that when I saw that some people weren't ready for it, I thought, what have we done to our children and our people in our schools and in our systems that when we open the prison gates, they're not ready to come out? What have we done to people? And it broke my heart. And my life's purpose now is to untether the human spirit in the workplace. And this is my life's work. Because I think this is what we need to do. We need to really, those 66% of the US workforce, I want to help them. And I'm hoping this will do that. So the key differentiators, I want to close it with these differentiators, just to recap. So we're talking about choreography over orchestration. We're not building it on Scrum, we're building it on open space technology. And we're working on a network instead of static teams, a fluid network. This is why you should choose FAST right now, because we're moving out of the age of mass production. We're moving into this age of disruption. Scrum is 20 years old, and it worked for us at the time. And I think the rate of change is going faster and faster. So we need different models that aren't rooted in Taylorism. And from that era of management, we need this new ways of thinking and working. But do we have to use Scrum? No, we don't. Here's a quote from Ken Schwaber. Scrum can be replaced or superseded by anything that also supports its underlying principles, as fluid scaling technology does. And you can go to that link and find that quote from him there. So here's how to find out more. We'll share the deck so you can access it later. I'm not going to read these out, but essentially that's our presentation. And at this point, we're going to open it to Q&A. I think I shall kill the slide deck if that's all right. And
Yeah, cool. Well, that was exciting. So I implore you to join Agile 20 Reflect, because that's what we're trying to do in February, is to talk about cool new stuff beyond the decade, I should say, of Scrum and Agile Manifesto, because life moves on and we elect different presidents. So I would encourage anyone to ask questions now. Open up your mic and go for it.
There are a few that are in the chat that maybe we could address also, so
Cool.
that they don't get lost.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry if I mangle the name. Royce was asking about how this works in a remote digital environment.
mm-hmm.
And I used to say it doesn't. And because of the nature of the work, mainly because we were tied a lot to our XP practices, right? To mobbing and pairing, and the communication that has to go with all that. It was very, very hard to work with a remote team. Now, that might be changed, right? Obviously, we find ways. We don't have to come to San Francisco to talk to you guys anymore. In fact, everybody at my company, we're out, possibly indefinitely remote if we want. And I know people that are heading to Idaho and Hawaii, and so maybe it can be done now. But I don't know what that process entails, and I think it's more than just a check-in online once a day type of thing, right? Yeah. So I think there's a lot of learning to go on there.
Since COVID, I've been to 2 open space events. I don't know if you have yet, Paige. I've been to 2 open space online events, which I always thought, how does that work? And I was just amazed that it's possible. So yeah, like Paige said, like we used to say, I don't know. Not that it couldn't, but like, I don't know. But just because we don't know doesn't mean you can't. But now I have a lot more confidence that it is possible. Now I've seen open space work online and the tooling that they used.
Yeah, Micah was asking about the proper formal organizational structure and who does the hiring and the career development and budget we can talk a little about that. I don't in terms of, I'll give you some examples of what we found. Because we were very empowered to decide how we worked, we also decided. We had people like Woody Zool came and we had him teach us mobbing and that sort of thing. Oh, it was fabulous. We had him come in a couple times. We had Fred George come in, like 4 times and teach everybody that was new to the team that hadn't been. We went through like an boot camp with Fred George. And out of this, we also sort of started to have this learning mindset where we actually had we started off with a once a week kata practice for anybody that wanted to show up. And then after Woody came, we decided to start trying a 3-hour learning lab on Wednesday mornings, which was fabulous. We ran it open space. There was no restrictions around what we could learn. And we actually had products that came out of it. Someone said, hey, I wonder if I can build an Alexa skill. And we actually had products that came out of it where now at Primera, you can say, hey, Alexa, what's my deductible at? And Alexa will text you a pin. You tell Alexa the pin that got text to you. And then Alexa will say, your deductible is, you still have $400 left. Your last payment was, et cetera. that's a thing that the company now uses for sales purposes, and to say, hey, look, we have this great thing, and that came out of our just taking time to learn.
Yeah.
Along
I
with
mean, I
that,
see
the
that. My question was kind of a simple one.
yeah,
I've always been a kind of a senior executive type, and I've kind of thought managers and formal organizational structures matter, right? And so, I know my last book, I talked a lot about this, is what are the roles of organizational managers and what do they need to do, et cetera, right? So as I look at yours, I think you're pushing the boundaries of what a self-organizing team can do, which is really
yes.
interesting and exciting, right? I think that there's a lot of power in opening up the capability of people to collaborate together in a more effective way, right? But I think there's a structure that's required to many of these things, and who hires people and who manages people and who makes sure who's on what team and who manages the budget and who makes sure that the technology department has a good relationship with the legal department, the compliance department. All of those things I think matter, right? So I was just curious in your way of how you align or how you deal with the formal organizational structure to help you implement this more productive way of people working together effectively.
Yeah.
And
I'll just
Michael,
interject. I'll just interject and say that none of that shit matters.
Michael in his question added firing as well, which is handling problem employees in our.
You bet. I mean, I think that's one of the most important obligations that organizational leaders have, is to fire people when they don't fit nicely or help them move on to the next phase of their career. But
And I think that was something that we had to deal with and figure out. So we, like Ron had said, we did have a director above us who reported directly to the CIO.
And was that the person who enabled all of this when you said you were empowered to do this? Is this the person who could actually say, you are empowered to do this, and then bear the heat?
Yep.
Yes. And in fact, yes, there's some really good, he was great at that. There were times I would send him notes about, this person's not doing what they said they were going to do, you know, and he would send me back a thing that said, well, what are you going to do about it? Right. You know, so he was very good at that. I think that there were interactions with other teams, with other departments that sometimes could have gone better. And I think that it's just because of the way we worked, and because that natural leadership would come up, there would be like, we need to go talk to this department, and someone would say, oh, I can do that. I have some knowledge about that, and I know somebody over there, whatever. And so instead of sending a manager or whatever, a senior person, this person would go over there, and the team trusted that at least they would get the information back to the rest of the team.
I mean, I really like that about your method. I think it's fantastic.
But around,
I was just curious about the formal side,
yes,
right, of it. So
and
maybe
and
you guys
there was
didn't see that very much because it didn't get in the way. It didn't really matter.
Yeah, there was a hiring. Obviously, there was an HR department, and in terms of the interview and the process of hiring and that sort of thing, the team would decide, and then, but it was basically up to, I believe, the director had ultimate authority in that sense. Okay. Same with firing; it would have to go through the proper channels, and all the HR stuff wasn't up to us as really team members. But on a separate or another, on the other hand, I guess, we did have the kind of organization and team and camaraderie that there was a truthfulness that would come out, and issues that needed to be dealt with could be often dealt with in a way that was not vindictive and not, we were safe. We were safe. That's a great way of saying it. We were safe to say, this is a problem, and something between Ron and I are having this problem, and it might be, I think it's him, honestly, but it could, I don't know what it is, and it was safe to have that conversation, and it was safe for me to go to Ron, and we had processes in place to deal with that sort of thing also. So in the formal organization, it still existed.
So Paige and Ron, how did you create that psychological safe the environment. So
Yeah,
all this could
exactly.
happen.
Yeah.
You know, it's a political, cultural thing. So how did y'all do that?
Yeah, and that was my aha and why I shared, like, if you are going to do this, step one is to say, how do we make decisions and how do we resolve conflict? Because you have to have that in place and you have to have agreed to that as the team going in, and that's the rules going in. Now, if we decide that it's rock, paper, scissors, then it's rock, paper, scissors. Hey, Paige, you're totally wrong. We shouldn't be doing that. I think we should do this. 1, 2, 3, you win. Oh, okay. That's what we do. Now, that's a ridiculous way to resolve conflict or make decisions. But so you have to, whatever it is, you have to decide what it is and then agree to that, because you are entering a self-organization bumps up against self-management really quickly. So you've got to have a tribe that can manage itself and sort its own shit out, which means you have to have that safety. So self-organization can lead to Lord of the Flies as well, right? If you're familiar with that book, I don't know of another analogy, but it can go bad. Like you can end up with bad leadership, and we know what that looks like, right, Jay? Or you can end up with, so you got to put the right safe rails in place to make sure that you don't end up with bullies running the system, and that people feel safe and they can express themselves. I think Woody Zill said it really well. All people want is the ability to be heard and have their opinion counted. And so this is what the system has to account for, that everyone has a voice and everyone's heard.
Yeah, Ron and Paige, I have two questions here, just to pick up on this topic about self-organization. As a manager or a people manager, you have to deal with HR and legal, right? And I see a lot of nods. And this whole thing about rock, paper, scissors, working arrangements and all of that are great. But unless it's documented and structured, legal and HR is not going to back you. And as a people manager, you have to deal with people, and those governance guardrails are necessary.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if you have some examples on that. So that's my first question. The second one is on a little bit different topic. It's about, I was actually listening to a presentation by Jeff on this Scrum at Scale. And he has this product concept about scaling teams and all that, the different patterns. I just want your opinion on, the Scrum at Scale versus FAST as well. So these are my two questions.
So what was the something at scale?
It's a Scrum at Scale.
Scrum at Scale. Oh yeah,
Jeff Sutherland is,
okay. Yep.
It has written a book. He's actually trying to scale Scrum to be more enterprise, and he has all of these patterns, product pattern, the team patterns, and all that, where you can scale teams and bring it together. It's like a Scrum of Scrums on steroids, and different views of that, and how to use that for scaling. So I was just wondering, how do you reconcile that with the fast agile concepts that you guys are thinking of?
Okay. And what was the first part? Paige was about to answer it.
So it was more about the guardrails of legal and HR.
Okay.
And yes, let me put it this way: we had a very good, strong, safe team. We had a working agreement and an agreement of how to resolve conflict. That does not preclude or get rid of or anything around the guardrails of legal and HR. And I don't know that we necessarily ran into like issues where they butted against each other. But I don't know. I'll put it that way. And maybe that's because I just don't know, and it happened or didn't happen. But it still existed. There was still an HR organization, and there was still this legal organization, and everything had to go through them as prescribed by them. Right? It wasn't like we just decided that we were going to do it this way and forgot about them or whatever. It was still a business, and so
Hey, Paige, at the end of the day, in your conflict resolution, your team would write something up, it sounds like, kind of a contract of some sort, or an agreement, better,
Yes.
an agreement.
Mm-hmm.
Did it basically say that our bosses will meet and they'll decide what to do? I mean, the reality is that's what probably would happen, right? Is that what it would say, is our team can't decide, we all talk to our managers and we get them together and have them decide?
We had steps, but yes.
You can do that, right? So that's abdication. So you can say, hey,
Yeah,
we can.
it's reality. At the end of the day, that's what ultimately happens with important things.
So we're coming out of the age of mass production, and a lot of our structures are still rooted in that age of mass production.
Yep.
So I'm not going to keep going, because we're gonna keep butting our heads against.
Okay.
What about this? What about this? So I'm going to say read the book Reinventing Organizations, because that
Awesome.
really goes into all of these questions. And there's a whole new movement called the Teal movement, where they're reinventing budgeting, they're reinventing HR, and they're coming up with what is possible in new ways. So we were inside a traditional organization, and we made it work. And I would love to reinvent the organization even further. I'd love to take that further. That's why I'm fascinated with the whole Teal movement now. But you don't have to be in a Teal movement, a Teal company, to make fast work. It can work inside a traditional organization as well. So I think that's all I wanted to say about like, what about HR and management, if that's okay.
Yeah, so the Lalu writings is interesting, and I think all of us have to see how that's going to impact us and what the outcomes are. Right?
Yes. Yeah. And why, are we going to start experimenting down that path? Valve is a great example. It per capita, like per employee, it's the most profitable company in the United States of America, right? So this is a company that has no HR, that has no managers. So, we're starting to push the boundaries and discover new ways of working. I'm not saying we need to throw out formal hierarchy, but I'm just saying we need to start questioning and trying different things, and that's what FAST was. I think it would work very well in a Teal org, but you don't need to go to Teal.
So
I think
this agrees with like some very successful companies. So like Apple. Apple does functional organizations, and they have specialists, and they only hire experts in the field.
Right.
And then they have experts that hire experts. And they supervise, well, not really, they don't supervise anything. They hire experts to come in and self-organize and do their own thing, and that's why they're, in my opinion, so very successful. So they took this theory about this organizational structure and this way to organize people to do so, but they're very specialist oriented, right? To that point, I think what you all have presented has been represented very well with some of the most successful companies in the world. I think what's happening is the rest of the companies in the world are trying to play catch up, right? And not all this will fit entirely into their culture and their maturity and how they're going to grow, right? They'll have to figure that out as they go. But I do like that notion that people come together, self-organize, figure stuff out, and make it work. I think that is what Agile is about.
Right. We're not really being agile with our companies, right? The way we're working is ancient. It's a good 100 years old, and it hasn't changed. And so it's time to try something new, because the rate of change is getting quicker and quicker. And I don't think our current structures are going to work. And we're looking at how long companies are staying on the S&P 500 now. And that rate is just dropping and dropping and dropping. So these old formal organizations are being killed out by startups, by companies that are innovative and able to move very quickly. And that's the pattern that's happening now. So I think this is why we need companies that are managed and run differently as well.
And I love that. So I would like
Jay,
to, oh, I'm sorry.
Jay, can I speak to both what you
Sure,
and
go ahead.
Ron were saying? I really like that statement that FAST is harder to corrupt than other Agile approaches.
Thank you. Yeah. I wanted to make it such that self-organization wasn't just lip service; it was inescapable. And I think that that's kind of at the heart of it.
I think that was Jay's point, was that this is what Agile tells us to do. It's just that other approaches are much more easily corruptible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I like that thought a lot.
Yeah.
Really good Scrum is actually really good Scrum. But
Right. There's nothing wrong with it. It's really powerful.
There's just a little of it, and it's very team oriented, not scalable.
Right. Yeah.
But at the end of the day, people have to make their mortgage. People have to pay for their kids to go to school,
Mm-hmm.
and they're going to adapt whatever pays their salary. And unfortunately, many of us, say, okay, cool, we're going to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't try to push the envelope, right? And that's where we're at today. Only very few companies you are lucky where you're allowed to experiment and do this, right? And you learned a lot. And we'll see much, much more of this over time, right? Mm-hmm. And it will adapt and adjust to some paradigm change, right? Mm-hmm. However, at the time, it's very difficult for large companies for them to accept this and do this experimentation and adjust accordingly. Just think about it. If I have a company of 300,000 people mm-hmm. over the globe, and they have to change to be able to accustom themselves to their market requirements, their customer requirements, and all that stuff, do BAU and innovation at the same time, and then adjust accordingly to produce outcomes, right? And measure outcomes. It's a difficult proposition for them to how to balance that, right?
But you do get renegades, and so you guys, Ron and Paige, had a renegade director. There was a renegade director in 1999 at Schwab who was doing this thing called extreme programming.
Right.
The paradigm change in 1999 was every bit as dramatic as what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It just takes some renegade to say, "Hey, I've got a project. Come work on this way."
Mm-hmm. And if I know we're struggling with, well, these big companies can't change and it's hard, and it's true, because they're these big companies it's like like an ocean liner, right? They don't turn really quick, and it's hard. But I think, if I look at Hire, this Chinese company, they're approaching 100,000 employees, and they are very much working in this teal fashion. So I think that's one of the standards we're looking at now as far as self-management at scale. So it's starting to happen already. And yeah, I think Hire is mentioned in the Lalou's book. 100,000 employees, there's not one manager there. One of the most profitable and successful companies in China right now.
Yes, and they're doing good. Zappos is good. So I just predict from this election that these things that you're all talking about, thank you, Paige and Ron, will evolve. And then same thing with large scale Scrum Less and others. They've done this many times in Europe and stuff, where they created this environment that you all created, right? Here in the US. So it's wonderful, I think it allows people to expand and be autonomous and self-creative, right? So I love it.
You gonna do it?
Well, now I've got to get my clients to do it.
There were a couple other questions that we didn't get to. Waldy, I didn't answer one or two of yours. Do you want to bring any of those up? Maybe. Okay. He just asked.
I was asking, for example, about the feedback and the collaboration of how this is happening, because if you don't have, like, it sounds like, yes, you have iterations, and in the beginning I understood you don't have several meetings, you only have 1 or 2 defined meetings, so you want to keep it a little bit simple. At the same time, if you don't have a, let's say, a certain structure and continuous events or meetings happening, then you know, how do people know that this is done, or potentially, and if you don't have acceptance criteria, you know, things that we know, there might be somebody that is, you know, over engineer because they're amazing and doing great work and maybe do too much. So how do they feel that they should check in and demo to the product owner, whoever?
So there were a couple things that we had that helped address that. One, because we were doing very short iterations, you know, we were continually getting feedback, not only from the product owner or the director who is sitting there actually with us. And that was sort of one of the requirements, is like, you need to be available or have someone that available when we have a question, right? We can't send an email and wait for a reply, or wait until the next demo day or whatever to find out that what we're doing is not the right direction. Plus, you know, if we're working and we're cruising on this stuff, I want to say to you, hey, is this the right color? Is this the right, you know, are we doing the right thing here? Is this exactly what you were thinking? And get that feedback as quick as possible. So very short iterations worked. In terms of the over engineering, because we were pairing and mobbing, because we continually we were able to not only give the demos, the demos weren't necessarily just for the product owner type, stakeholder type. It was for everybody on the team. And, you know, so everybody was able to sort of stay on the level of, oh, that group over there is working on this. And, you know, we were working on that. And we had a couple times where we ran into, like, I have to build a connector to Azure, and they built a connector to Azure, and we did it 2 different ways. And okay, well, here's a work slot that we're going to fill up next iteration, and we're going to take both those ways and figure out which one works best. And, you know, we're going to use that as a team or as a tribe from now on, right? Or at least until we decide that there's a better way and refactor it or whatnot. So I think there was enough communication between all of the groups, and enough communication across the tribe, and that like the over engineering didn't happen as much as it would in, well, like places where I'm working now, or places where we're not necessarily communicating all the time about what's going on. And the same with the feedback, right? We'd said there's only one meeting in FAST, and that's sort of true. And the sort of true is that there's only one meeting in FAST, but that doesn't mean that we're not sitting down with the people who we need to sit down with at other times throughout the day or the iteration or the week, or we're not setting up meetings with security to make sure that we're doing this, you know, or setting up meetings with legal to make sure that we're not releasing anything that could be considered PII or that sort of thing. There was only one sort of, what do we call it? There was only one sort of meeting in the framework. You know, there were a lot of other meetings that we would, right after we decided the teams, right after we would do the iteration, that one meeting where we would choose our work or what we're going to work on for the next iteration. Then that group would go get together and say, okay, let's figure out who's going to work on what. Are we going to do, you know, 6 of us in a mob? Are we going to do 3 pairs? You know, are you guys going to work on this connector, or, you know, are we going to work on the data side of it? Or, you know, so there was definitely still planning and that sort of thing. It just wasn't super formalized in like, this is that we have to do the planning on Monday and then we have the demo on Friday, and, you know, that sort of thing. One of the other really positive things that we did, I think, was we had this belief that anybody can come to any team at any time and sit down and say, show me what you're doing. And we should be able to go, here's where we're at and here's what we're working on. And, you know, we didn't really have pictures, but we had our boards. Basically, they were whiteboards filled with sticky notes, and we developed this system of showing our work in progress. And we would, you know, whenever we would find the next thing we need to add to this task that we're working on, we'd write it on a sticky and we'd draw a line to it, and then we'd tick the corners to say that it was in process. And then when it was done, we'd cross it out, and we were using TFS. So we'd put the little TFS number in the corner to show what it was associated with. And anybody could walk up to the group and look at the board and just visually know right away where we were in terms of what had to be done and what was left, and, you know, get a fairly quick estimate of oh, looks like you guys are about 30% of the way to there. So
so what you said, Paige, this is very Kanban and lean.
Sure.
Where you stand up and you have people like look at the board and determine what's going on, and the effects and who has to swarm and do work, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of that in there. In the end, there was a lot of that had been incorporated into the process, most certainly. I think that we found that having these whiteboards with stickies on them, for basically, originally it started out, I think we had it on the walls, didn't we have it when I first started there? The entire sort of roadmap, not planned out in what you would call stories, but the direction was on the wall. But as we started mobbing and that sort of, and working in swarms, we had whiteboards with stickies, and it worked really well for us. And we don't have pictures of it, but it was a really nice process.
Yeah, there's so a couple of things we discovered doing FAST. So the story map we discovered very quickly became splintered. So it was really hard to maintain that wall of work. So we said, well, why don't we just keep the main features on the story map? We ended up calling it a feature map. And then as the story splintered out, so each feature had its own board, and we called those a feature tree. So actually there's I think if you look for feature mapping in Quinn Gill, and so my goal, I can put a link in. Oh, I think I did, didn't I? Yeah.
Yeah, in the deck.
And so feature mapping, and what, you know, this feature mapping feature trees, you can do that inside Scrum. I think it's a wonderful thing that we discovered, and you can do it separate to FAST, but it works really well. We discovered it as part of FAST. It's actually going to be a standalone book in itself. So there will be a FAST-Agile book, and there will be probably before that there will be a feature mapping book. The other neat discovery we came up with was, how do you forecast or estimate inside? You know, because we don't, in Scrum, like the team that does the work does the estimate. Or like, well, we don't know who's going to do the work. So this is where the wisdom of crowds came in, and we did, or blink estimation is another name for it. So we just said, all right, with this feature map, it's not a story map anymore. So at this top level, if I grab this feature, hey tribe, how many person days is in this? And we had a little app. Just put in your, don't tell anyone else around you, put in how many person days is in this feature. You go 120. I'm like, all right, So everyone does it. All we did, we grabbed it, we averaged it, and there was our, hey, I had a forecast, I had an estimate. It was that quick. So within minutes or an hour, I could forecast the entire backlog. Was it correct? Was it accurate? I bet it was as accurate as every dumb other fucking estimation method you're using today, right? So don't waste time on estimation if you can do very quick blink estimation. And so this is what we did. We did blink estimation. So that with the way that we tracked the work and we measured the time against the work, and then we would redo the blink estimation as we went through. That was how we forecast, extremely quick. So fast forecasting and feature mapping are the two of the things we discovered, and I'll be sharing as gifts to the Agile community that you can use outside of FAST and
You're
okay,
along
sorry
those
for the
same
profanity.
lines. Along
Yeah, I
those
was
same
gonna say
lines.
thank you. Go ahead.
I was going to say the product directors, the POs, the business stakeholders had a tough time with that, obviously, in the beginning. But we were able, but because of the ability to be open, and like I said, they could show up at any point and say, where are you and what are you guys working on? And we would be able to show them. They became comfortable with that. They learned that, you know, when we said, you know, this is what we're working on, and, you know, we'll have something for you, or, you know, when we said we can't really tell you how long that's going to take, but we can get you something in production, you know, soon. They were comfortable that we were that we were not just trying to shirk the work and say, you know, that we're just not going to tell you that, right? Because they got, what am I trying to say? They grew to learn to trust the system as much as we did.
Yeah, that was the key word, trust. We all have to, like, you know, rise to that occasion to the people that are paying. Okay, so our credibility depends on how many times we promise something and deliver. It's as simple as that.
Yeah,
right?
and provide transparency. So, hey, when is this thing going to be done? Well, I can show you. This is the beauty of the feature trees, the feature mapping. You can say, well, so far we've spent 30 days of effort, and we've got this much done. Which, as the tree splinters out, you go, which is probably about half the work. So there's probably 30 days left on this feature, and you can visualize it and see it. Probably 30 days. So you're in that ballpark, and the feature mapping gives you that confidence of like last week's weather, and you can see it. You can say we're definitely, you know, we're roughly halfway through. This is how much time we've spent. So it's likely going to be the same again.
Yeah. And when we would go to those people and say, look, we found out that this is going to be a major issue. Right? What we thought was going to be not that hard, turns out it's going to be terribly hard because of this and this and this, right? They had that trust, and they were able to go, oh, okay, I see. It's not that you're lying to me about the forecast. It's that you know, you're being very transparent about what's actually happening, and so that, you know, that was a nice side effect of that as well.
So I'm going to be a decent Scrum Master.
Yay.
And say that we're 5 minutes till the end. Is there any questions of the people that survive to ask the distinguished guests?
I'd like to say thanks for sharing. It's really a pretty fascinating thing. It's kind of one polar end right now, I think, which is valuable. And it's very focused on enabling these people to work together effectively. So thanks for sharing.
Yeah, most certainly.
Indeed, thank you very much.
Welcome. If anyone's interested in getting Paige and I down and helping you out, our rates are extremely reasonable. No, seriously, I would love to help another company organization move to FAST. I may not even be in a position to, but I certainly I do know of other consultants that are. And so if you are interested, I can put you in touch with them.
Cool. So
Thanks, guys. Yeah.
thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for sharing all these.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. So thank you for doing this. I know this is cool, it's different, and hopefully this will take on because I think it's valuable. And we'll go forth from this and join. I would encourage both of you all to join the Agile 20 Festival and present this globally. This would be great. So thank you all. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ron. Thanks, Paige.
Thanks and good journey.